Okay, here we go. I'm Ron Hollis. Today I'm going to talk about the forum for the future. So if you don't know what a forum is, I'll explain it in just a second. But this is part of what I call a Hollis lesson series. So I've been blessed, and a lot of experience. So I'm trying to capture some of that in these short videos to share with others who want to learn. So this one's Forum for the Future: How to Plan and Execute a Successful Forum Experience. The agenda, you can reference back to it, but we're going to discover what are the basics of a forum, who am I, what's my why, and then what's the problem with forum. And if you're in a forum, it's going to resonate, you'll get it. If not, step one would be understand what a forum is and go get one. So who is this for? So this presentation is actually for forums that have existed for a while, and they realize their approach is not sustainable. They're losing members, losing energy. The forum experience itself it has become routine. And so members drop out, they become disengaged, or they drop off. The objective is to share another approach to forum management that integrates the principles of execution and modern technologies. And that'll make a little bit more sense. But this was created recently for me and my forum experience, and now I'm just wanting to share it with others. So what is a forum? So if you don't know anything about a forum, I do want to take a little bit to share a commercial for this, because forums are very powerful aspects of life. So forums are small groups of aligned individuals that are willing to abide by a constitution that requires commitment, confidentiality, and trust. So we think of it as a small group, a mastermind, a special board of advisors, but the key is that these are people that it's a non-judgmental environment at which you trust them, they trust you. And as we go through life, especially as business leaders, it gives you an outlet to communicate, and it gives you a way to observe others. So why do they exist? Well, if you're an entrepreneur or a business leader, but definitely if you're an entrepreneur, you realize it's a very isolated role. You have a lot on your mind, you have a lot of responsibilities, and you have very, very few people in your world that you can confide in, that you can be vulnerable in, that you can share your concerns, your fears, your aspirations. You may think that there's people in your company, your number two guy that you can share, but there are just certain things that you cannot share. You cannot be vulnerable, especially in leading a company. Go home, you don't want to take all your problems home. So to your partner there, of course you share and you trust, but there's just certain things that you don't have anyone that can relate to your problems. So forums are an effective strategy to have that outlet to share and to learn. So it's highly therapeutic, highly learning through experiential observation. So with trust and commitment bond, the forum experience can be the most valuable resource in your life. And I'll talk a little bit about my forum experience. I've 20 years in a forum, and it's been very, very rewarding. So what do you get? You get to build another family that knows you better than anyone. And you actually develop real friendships. These are people that you truly can count on. They're the people, if you have one call to make, typically it's going to be someone in your forum that you can count on. So that's the forum. If you don't know what one is, go to Entrepreneurs Organization or go to YPO, research it. That is a piece of their membership. To me, it's the most valuable part of a membership in those organizations, and then all the universities and the other knowledge are highly secondary. So who am I? So you can read my bio. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur most of my career. I started as a Boeing engineer, worked on the space station. Very, very proud this week. SpaceX, Falcon 9, and Dragon launched to the space station. I watched it. Very proud. I designed the hatch tracks, which I could not see, but the door opened and closed, so it's good. So I'm an entrepreneur and a business leader. And so I love business, and I love leading organizations and fixing companies. But I also realized that, 20 years ago that, that isolation I was referring to, and I joined, it was called Young Entrepreneurs Organization at the time, as soon as I could. And I was in a forum training in January of 2000, actually. And it was very powerful to me. So as an entrepreneur, a couple of things I think is funny as an entrepreneur, right? What it means is I don't like people to tell me what to do, and that's important. And the forum is designed so that you don't actually give or take advice. It's all experiential learning. I'm very confident in my abilities, and so confident sometimes that you're unable to share your vulnerabilities. I hate to waste time. This is the way I am programmed, and that's why when I'm in forum, I expect to get a return on my investment. That's one of the reasons that I've always been actively involved in that. And one of the reasons, sharing this information. And I always believe there's a better way. And again, that really fits into this conversation because what I'm sharing with you is a new approach. I believe an evolved approach to forum, not just something that we did or I did with my forum, but a way to that could be shared with others. So my why for this, I've been in a forum for 20 years. I started in what was called YEO and YPO. First forum training was January 2000. I remember it vividly. One of the key pieces that you got out of that was these people in your forum are going to be with you for life. They are your future pallbearers. And I said, that's okay. However, it doesn't quite work that way. And so I became frustrated. So I'm actually in, essentially my third forum. My first forum formed, and we actually went through a couple of iterations and changes. And now I'm in the current forum, my YPO forum. We've been together 16 years. They are my brothers and my sisters. We started with 10. We're down to 6. But we're very, very close. The process that I'm going to share with you is the process that we use. It's the process we've used mostly for the last 10 years. And this year we revised it and upgraded it. That's the reason I'm sharing it with you. I believe that in the value of a strong forum to help you learn, grow, and be more effective in life. That effectiveness for me comes from learning and observing the life experiences of others. When I see, fellow forum mate having a significant business or a life problem, learning what other people share about their lives and learning what that person does to react to it and what works, what doesn't. And that's how, it becomes very, very valuable. And, my why is I want my current forum to last the rest of my life. I want them to be available to my family after I'm gone. So, I'm committed to make my forum my pallbearers, and we're all committed to each other. So my why in this situation was to design and share a forum system that is sustainable to ensure each forum member receives adequate value in exchange for the time, participation, and commitment. It's a mouthful. It sounds easy, but what happens with this traditional process, it becomes routine quickly, and that perceived value can diminish rapidly. And so you have to figure out how you maintain the positive energy. So what's the problem? So forum has been around for a long time. YPO was called a 50-year organization. It created this forum process, and it's predominantly the forum process that most forums use. So essentially a 50-year-old format, which means you come together each month for 10 months out of the year. You meet for 4 hours, and within that meeting, you do personal updates, and then a couple of members give presentations about crises or issues, etc. That's the fundamental format. And the idea is that everyone comes, you come together every month, and you do that. And that's great for the first year, maybe, or 2 years. But once you've learned everybody and not everyone's having a crisis, it becomes a little stale. The updates become the same. And so what you want, or what the problem, I believe, is that the forum experience needs more diversity in the process and in the planning and execution. And that's what my forum did. Again, about a decade ago, we implemented very rigid process and planning, which is one of the reasons I'd say we're close as we are now. And this year we revamped everything with an updated constitution and added additional versatility in our meeting regimen, which I'll share. One thing that I've learned after 20 years is the key to success for a forum experience is you get value from forced interconnectivity. So in this journey, I went and I talked to a lot of my peers or people who've been in forum as long as I have and said, what's working, what's not working? And a common theme that came back was this word I use called forced interconnectivity. You got a lot of smart, professional, successful people who actually want to be together in their forum. However, if you leave it to them to do it on their own, it will never happen because there's other things that are more important. So forced interconnectivity is the word that comes back. It says, if I force us to get together in meetings or in conversations or in emails or in sharing, we want to do that. And when we do that, we get value from each other and with each other. However, you need a system and a process that is positively aligned to this forced interconnectivity. And that becomes a very important theme that you'll see in this process is how do you have a process or a plan for that? So how do we design a forum experience that can provide for appropriate value to the members and last a lifetime? And that becomes the nut because once you've invested a lot of energy in helping someone understand you, your life, your behaviors, where you came from, where you want to go, it's not trivial and it's not something you want to keep doing with strangers. So you want these are lifelong commitments. So here's a solution. So me and my forum, we created or updated this process again, the traditional forum process that's always been used. And we said, how can we make it better? And we've done that over 16 years. Again, we started with a traditional forum, and we evolved it after 3 or 4 years. After we actually started with 10 members, we dropped to 8 real quick within a year because of a lack of commitment. Then we lost another, and we started challenging, are we a forum for life? And in that, we said, well, why don't we recommit to the forum and redesign the process? And that's exactly what we did a decade ago. That part works. I'm going to share that. And then again, how do you continue to increase the energy? The fundamental differences between what I'm going to share with you and what you're taught in traditional forum and forum management are 3 things. One of them is a structured retreat process. So they're going to say you go do an annual retreat, you go do it. What they don't give you is that process that you do in the retreat. How do I get the value? How do I come out of that with a detailed plan that I can go and execute, just like business? And my forum, we treat our forum just like we treat it as a business. We have a strategic plan. We track that plan. We execute to that plan. When we're winning, we're winning. And when we're losing, we're fixing. So structured retreat process, and I'm going to share the process we use. This takes a lot of energy. It's a commitment, but we believe that you invest now to have a positive future. The second is a strategic plan. Again, the traditional forum process doesn't really give you a strategic plan. It says, hey, come together at these times, have these meetings. So we use a process called Priority Strategies Goals, PSGs. It's an approach I've used for 20 years as well, managing business and life. We apply it here. You'll see it. It just simplifies a complicated system so that we know what's important, how we're going to achieve it, and that we're being successful. And then the last thing is the meeting regimen. We were part of the 10 meetings a year. We come together for 4 hours, and we've realized life isn't that way anymore. A piece of it is the time. This is 2020, technology, it's global business, global travel, all that's a little different. And we are a mature forum too. So we are all moving and diverse and highly dynamic. And so what we came together, especially this year, and said, well, how can we drive this force interconnectivity efficiently and maintain the flexibility we want in our lives? So we changed it, and I'll share with what we did. But we went to a 12 meeting per year format, but we mixed physical meetings and virtual meetings. And by doing that, allows us more force interconnectivity without losing that, and more creativity in our meetings themselves. So this is a big difference in what we did versus the traditional one. So keys to success. This is true for a positive forum experience, is that force interconnectivity. People are busy, but if you force them to come together, and they're committed to do that, they will interact, they will provide value, they will receive value. The other piece for a positive forum experience is be a team. So you can study, when showing these 5 dysfunctions of a team or whatever, but a team to me, you got to have emotional connection, you got to trust, positive conflict, resolution, commitment. Those pieces come together. That takes leadership. And of course, everyone in your forum's a leader, right? We're all business leaders. That's how we got there. And so now you have to be a leader of leaders if you're a forum moderator particularly. And you got to make sure that these things are happening, especially things like positive conflict, commitment, emotional connection. If one person is not committed, it will drag the others down, things like that. So we'll just call it, let's be a team. Adaptation to the phases of life. I started as a 30-year-old entrepreneur. I still was going to change the world, do all those things. While work-life balance was important, it was work in life. And as you get into your older phases, your children, etc., that work-life balance, which I don't truly believe in. I believe it's all integrated, but your life changes. And as a matter of fact, that maturity of who you are and your investments and what you want to learn, how you want to learn it. So the forum needs to adapt to these phases of life for the members. And then the last key to success is that documented strategic plan. That way everyone knows what we commit to do. We know if we're doing it, and we go forth and we measure if we did it. So all members must be present, involved, and committed before leaving the retreat, before leaving their forum meetings. So keys to success doesn't matter. This is from life lessons. So let's go. Let's get started. Well, I'm going to share with you my forum's called Dixie 7. I'm going to go through the process we just went through a couple of weeks ago for our annual retreat and how we did it. I'm happy to take questions, or you can email me or whatever, but this is the process that integrates those 3 elements I'm saying. It's a little bit different than the traditional forum process, and why I think that the forum experience can be positive. So first, you have the annual retreat. It's not trivial. You got to make sure it's planned. And so the 5 steps of that is that proper preparation. Have your agenda, have your homework. What we try to do is is make sure people are contributing before the retreat. So when we get in the retreat, we use that time to be very strategic and thinking. Have that planning, what we're going to do, the process, which I will share. Of course, we do updates and socialization because we do a 2-night retreat, so we get to spend a lot of time together. Socialization, four center connectivity, updates are key to that, so that you build that trust in that team. So here are the agendas, the slides. You can take them and use them as you want. This is the ones that we use this year. They incorporate what we consider our best practices, but highlights. Of course, have your agenda. What was, we did this exercise here is what's most important to you for your forum experience. Again, we use this year as a rejuvenation. We said, hey, let's reset some things. How can we tweak it, make it better? This is great. Everyone came prepared with this beforehand, and it allows you to truly understand where everyone is in their mindset. Where are they in their life? What do they expect out of their forum experience? And if you have huge differences, that's great, that conversation, because it may say that you can't have alignment. In our situation, turns out we all pretty much came out with the same desires out of our forum experience. Guidelines for a forum, we just use these to set these guidelines in the forum meeting, but I talk about the four center connectivity a lot. That is the key elements, and you see on the strategies for four center connectivity. How do I create it? Physical meetings, virtual meetings, overnight retreats, emails, updates, one-on-one events, things that bring you together so that you interact. We introduced virtual meetings this year. As I said, we went from a 10-meeting physical to a 12 meeting, which I'll talk about, but 8 of our meetings are actually going to be virtual. 4 of them are going to be physical, and I'll share that in a minute in the calendar section, but that is a big difference. Again, more four center activity without losing the quality of what our participation is. But we also say physical meetings are always available, because if someone's in a crisis, and we all need to be there, we're all committed to go to wherever that person is and have that meeting. And then that commitment to the four center connectivity, you hear that word a lot, commitment. And then physical interactivity is required at least quarterly. So we say no more than 1 quarter will we not be together. So each quarter, and you'll see how we manage that rotation. But that becomes an element. And these are guidelines that we use for this year's forum. So here's the forum structure I talked about. This year we agreed to go to 8 virtuals and 4 physicals. And we said in the year, let's assess it. What worked, what didn't. This is the calendar we use as we do our planning. What we did choose to do, which was I think is very powerful, I'm very excited, is in our 8 virtuals, they're significant. They're predominantly just going to be updates. So it's updates plus some homework, some housekeeping. And that gives us a chance to hear about each other's lives in shorter meetings. So we said those meetings will be 2 to 3 hours. So they're not the 4 hours and they're virtual. And we think actually most of them will be able to be shorter unless there's a presentation that someone wants to give. That's important. The 4 physical meetings are all going to be like retreats. They're at least 1 overnight. And what we find is, as a forum, those become very powerful. We all kind of dread them before they come because we're busy and you travel somewhere and how do I fit in. But once you get there, you decompress and you connect, we always leave rejuvenated. We're all thankful we did it. And so we said, well, let's do more of that. And so this year we're going to do essentially 3 overnight experiences and then our annual retreat, which is a 2 overnight. But the key is we're going to say we're going to have 3. We're going to go physically meet overnight in a different city. And so what you'll see in our planning for our PSGs were what kind of experiences do we want to have? And we correlated those experiences to cities so that we could all move to different areas and have different experiences, have the same experience together. So very excited. It is different. It is a commitment, right? You commit to travel, you commit to overnight. The agenda is structured so that it's a good solid 24 to 30 hours, but you're there, you're together, and you're bonding and thriving. Here's how we do the strategic plan. There's a whole video series on this if you really want to know about the PSGs. I think it's a very powerful approach to planning for business or anything. Here, essentially on the left, these are elements of what we call elements of the forum. Self-growth, help members grow as a family. We evolved those pillars, if you would, a decade ago and saying, this is what we believe is the foundation of our forum. And then every year we come through and say, what are the priorities? What is important to us? And so each person, it's all led, but it's collaborated. So our priorities are self-growth through learning. We're in this to be better, to learn, maintain a connection with each other, deeper knowledge of each other, quantity time, and quality time. So you can see those are our priorities. And then out of each one, we say, how do we accomplish it? So in the self-growth through learning, our three strategies are have educational presentations. And so we call those, they can be internal or external. We call them sharing, which is sharing and learning. You know, we have a lot of very smart people, a lot of experiences. So we drive hard for our members to teach us about themselves with other things. But it could also be external. And we did that as we did our brainstorming. Experience trips. And what we did was we merged experiences with companies that we would be interested in touring or exploring. And we found, we've been very fortunate, from Gulfstream to factories to Italy to companies in San Juan, et cetera, where we go in, meet with the CEO, we tour their company, we ask those questions. Being a YPO organization or YPO forum opens up a lot of doors. It gives us a reason to go to a new city, meet new people, see new companies, and we all learn and grow out of that. So we said, let's have these experience trips. And so we have some great ones planned for this year. And then have family member presentation, just a family member presentation. What that means is we all have children, or most have children that come through their phases of life. And so we learned a few years ago, having a member of the family come in and present. For instance, freshman year of college, tell us about it. How did it go? And that person comes in, and that child, son or daughter, comes in and gives a presentation. It's great for that child because they have to formalize a presentation, speak in front of the peers of their parent. It gives us a chance to get closer and make a connection with that child. Hugely valuable. So these are the ways we said self-growth through learning. So in our strategies, and you see our goals, which are easy. 1, 2, 3, we check them all. Maintain connection with each other. That's important. That is that force interconnectivity. It's so easy to go. I mean, it's not uncommon for a forum not to interact except for one time a month when they come together for those 4 hours. And in a month, a lot can happen. And it's hard to maintain connectivity with your brothers and sisters if you only touch each other once a month. So years and years ago, we went to starting touching each other at least once a week. And we do that with email weekly updates, so weekly email or text. So this year we modified and added text. Before it was each Sunday night, everyone would send an update on their lives. And that works really well. It just becomes something where we started losing some consistency because, different people are in email, some people like to text, et cetera. So this year we just made it a lot more open. Instead of giving an update on your life, just we call it an info bit. Just say something, right? Where am I? I'm in Italy, at my factory, or I'm somewhere, and it gets there. And so it allows us to maintain continuity with each other by sharing. So, and then of course we have monthly updates, and we do those in our meetings. So in our physical or virtual meetings. So these are the structured updates. We have, I'll have a folder for this, our update template. We updated it this year to be a little bit different than the traditional one, but essentially, it's, what's going on in your business, what's going on in your life, what's going on in family, and highs and lows, et cetera. So very similar format where you're trying to have a very important connectivity. A strong update is one where you're sharing that top 5% and that bottom 5% of your life. We say if you'd share it with someone at a bar, it's probably not real good for the update. As a forum mates, we need to see those fringes, those tail pieces. So the updates are important. Deeper knowledge about each other. This is what we talk about each member's sharing. We do life plans where everyone shares their life plans. We update them every year, every 2 years. For a long time, every year we would all come together at retreat and everyone give their life plan. This is where I am. Now we've moved that out a little bit so that because the life plans don't change so much once you get up to where we are. And but we still want to know each other's life plans. And of course, you have presentations, crises, divorce, change of jobs, issues with your business, et cetera. So those are all in that. The quantity time, celebrate milestone events. We have kids that are graduating, et cetera. So let's create situations that allow us to come together as we can. Of course, we have our meetings, integrate family members. So we're looking at doing an all group text for the family members. This is a new thing for us this year, a new strategy. We'll see how that goes. And then the last thing is that force interconnectivity. So you see how simple this is. Here are my priorities. What are my strategies? How I'm going to accomplish them. And then each one have goals. These goals are all measurable. This is a very, very simple forum plan. And I tell you, the key is that most forums do not have a plan like this, no matter how simple this is. They come through, they do the retreat, they talk about some things, they do their calendar, and they move on. And at the end of the year, they say, how was it? Well, they say, it was okay. Well, what would you change? Well, I don't know. And that's the piece that this starts to eliminate, because we're all a piece of the plan. We're all commit to the plan. And we walk out, we all know what the plan is. Then this is the last piece. This is what I call the maintenance of forum. This piece gets ignored a lot because it's the least fun. We created these steps years ago. We said each year we need to go through and review all these pieces of forum and make sure we still agree to them. We improve them, and we're committed to them. So you have your agendas. We had to add a monthly virtual and a quarterly experience. So we have an agenda. This is what it looks like, and that includes start times and breaks and exercises, etc. So if you think about the agenda, while it's simple, we all need to agree to it. We want to use the same one for each meeting. Forum update worksheets, again, updated hours for this year. You always want to make sure you agree to those. Everyone should be using the same methodology for their updates. Presentations. So when you have your presentation, the big key here is use a coach. Different presentations come about, different forms, internal presentations, external, etc. But what's important here, we learned, is make sure that you understand what other forum members are wanting to get out of it. Unless it's a crisis presentation. If it's some issue you're having, that's up to you. And there's a process you follow, and you use your coach, etc. The churning process, that's sharing about your life, to have deeper relationships and or to teach others. We call it churning, sharing, learning. It's a mashup word. It's very powerful. Again, people, your forum mates have special skills, talents, experiences that you can learn from. And all this does is give an outlet so that they can give a presentation to share that special knowledge or that special experience, as opposed to externals or always being a problem. The issue clearing process is a structured process, where you go through, if there's an issue between two forum mates, what is the process we go through? This is a YPO process that we recommend. The hands-in exercise, we use that for time management. 1, 2, 3 system. If one's good, your normal update's going to work. 2, you need 2 more minutes, and 3 is crisis. Let's stop. Meeting moderation. This is the moderator. What do we expect out of it? What works? What doesn't? Etc. The parking lot process. Where we capture ideas. The weekly update process that's shared, and then the Constitution review. That's the one that, it's ugly, and people, they usually don't read it after the first year. We go through and look at it every year, make sure we agree with it, and we all commit to it. And then again, this year we had to go make some modifications to ours about the virtual aspect, because we had a traditional physical. And then lastly, your meeting dates and topics, right? And that's the calendar piece that comes together. Then process, we use a moderator, a vice moderator. Moderators, the moderator, vice moderator is the incoming moderator, and they take over at the next retreat, treasurer, historian. And then the last thing we have is the forum scorecard review. So at the end of the meeting, provide at least one thing that's working well and one thing we can do to improve. It's very, very hard, but what it forces the forum to do is each person to be accountable. When you say, great forum experience, et cetera, and then 3 months later you want to quit because I'm not getting value, which can happen. This eliminates it so that you have checks at the end of each meeting. And it also lets the moderator understand ways that they can do a better job. So at the end of the day, you don't want to conclude the retreat. There's 100% verbal commitment by each member to be accountable in executing the strategic plan and the process. And it's each member's responsibility, because the moderator is just the moderator. All they can do is facilitate. It's up to everyone to own it. So summary of the forum for the future. It's not rocket science, pretty simple, right? As I say, plan and executed annual retreats. You build a plan, review your process, get recommitment. Having that formal strategic plan, documented, you see it in the spreadsheet, we all know what it is, and then it forces it leverages the power of force interconnectivity. And then the adapted calendar, what I call adapt to your phases of life. We implemented virtual, so we're in many, many cities. It allows us all to come together, no matter if we're traveling or not. It made the calendar management a lot easier. And then since we added the 4 retreats, if you would, now we have more social bonding time where we can have more experiences. So what do you get? So, if you commit to these things, and you get a highly aligned plan for the forum experience, everyone knows. You have accountability metrics to measure to avoid the subjective assessment of forum value. One of my frustrations is the guy says, I'm just not getting anything out of it. And you say, why? Well, I don't know. And we've had that experience. So this starts to eliminate that, because we said this is how we're going to measure it. Transparency of the form experience expectations. So we say, well, here's our experiences. Here are the plants we're going to visit. Here are the companies, or here's the learning. So it's all there. You all know if you have an issue with any of it, you have to speak up in the retreat. That flexibility to shift the form to align with the phases of life. And when we're a 16, 17-year-old form, you'll see that as the form and the members mature, different phases of life. And then it gives it a voice in the process, ensures verbal commitment. It becomes a very powerful approach that we have on alignment. It doesn't, if you all prepare, it actually only takes 4 or 5 hours to come together to do this. If everyone comes prepared, they have their homework, and then the moderator keeps it on track. So it's not as onerous as it might look. If you have any questions or whatever, feel free to reach out to me, my email, and happy to help you in any way.